Hello, we are live. Woo, 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 woo. Welcome to SEO Collective September. Thank you so much for coming. It is so great to see so many wonderful faces. We got some new faces in here. We've got some old faces we haven't seen for a while. So, not pointing at anyone in particular. I'm not saying old for anything other than it's just so great to see so many people here. Of course, this is a meetup that has been going since 2011. So that's what I mean. Like, it's such a great online and now in-person community. Is great. Of course, I'm welcomed here with my good friends, Peter Mead.
Thank you. It's great to see everyone. As Nick said, so many people coming back again and so many new people as well. And that's what it's all about. So we're always happy to share the knowledge and keep the conversation going. So plus I do want to say, make a mention to the people who helped to make this possible. It takes a lot of work to do. So the committee members, the people who helped to organise things. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Peter. Of course, it wouldn't be possible without our wonderful array of people. So I'm just going to kick it off because we are very, very lucky here tonight. But I just want to give a brief but important message that we are here on stolen lands. This is the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation's original home, and I just want to pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Thank you. All right, onto an agenda and a little bit of housekeeping. So I'm sure a lot of you already remembered this from last time, but if you're here new, there are some toilets that need codes. So they're both at the door, but I'll also put them on the screen after this. So if you've got a phone, take a snapshot. But of course, we're going to go through, as per normal, we're going to go through all the news. So everything that happened last month, August, we're going to go through that. Of course, there was a helpful content update, which we'll get into, and a couple other nice little tidbits, but we can be able to explore that. And we are very, very lucky here today because all the way down from Sydney, we have got the amazing Amanda King. Give her a round of applause.
You're building me up too much.
Oh, mate,
Absolutely
you're
not.
a legend. You're an absolute legend.
We've got the screens reversed, have we?
Oh, shivers. Our screen casted the wrong one. How about that? Well, we had some casting available.
Technical issues. What could go wrong?
There we go. All right, so we're going back. Yes, awesome. Thank you so much for pointing
So
that out.
how many people came tonight, especially for Amanda King? Everyone!
Seriously, no pressure.
It's already on the third water.
Is it water or is it vodka?
We'll find out. Stay tuned after this. So that would be great. If you do have any questions or anything like that, please make sure to either just ask or save them up to the end. Of course, for all of our people that are tuning in online, I'll do my best to toggle back and forth and see any questions. But otherwise, please reach out to us on Twitter. All the information should be in the link down below. And if you're there, hi YouTube, please subscribe, and hit the notification bell for all the latest things coming up. Obligatory, have to do it. All right. Like we said, there's a whole team that goes through and makes things like this possible. It doesn't just happen overnight. Of course, I want to really, shout out to our official sponsors, some emerging, hopefully, but, officially we've got SEO Workshop run by Peter Mead. You want to give yourself a...
So we're just... There's a lot of work going into setting up things where we're working on behind the scenes so that we can accept much more sponsorship. At the moment, I've decided to run a workshop on behalf to raise some money for the SEO Collective and also to give everyone here a chance to be involved in the workshop experience. And so that involves in-person workshops. So please, the idea of this one is it's SEO essentials for small business and website owners. And I know there's people here that tonight have already said they want to join on, but please send an email to that email address and we'll get the shortlist happening. And then we can set dates. I'll keep you informed of the dates and the times and the content of the workshop. So.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Peter. And of course, we're also sponsored here. We are obviously in EzoGo Gaming's workspace in their kitchen. And again, it's so nice to have like a little official home away from home. So thank you so much to EzoGo Gaming, to Peter Machinkovich, and to the whole team here. Thank you so much. All right, get your phones, take a photo. You gotta do it. Trust me, you will thank me later. I even wrote it up there. Awesome. It's like, what did I do last night? Why have I got a tour thing? Oh, sorry.
Technically, you don't need to see it. Clear the previous.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Alrighty. Now, on to the news. So August was an interesting time. I just wanted to give a little bit of our shout outs to our good friend Saijo George. He couldn't make it here tonight for some personal reasons, but we're sending a lot of love and a lot of to his family right now. But yeah, if you want to be able to follow at home, you can go through that QR code and just be able to follow along. It does update. So helpful content. Firstly, I think I kind of already know because I've had a look at our search consoles and had a bit of a time to be able to brew on this from the community. But is anyone seeing anything? Anyone seeing anything? Yeah, right? Maybe we got a maybe. Well, that's better than the majority, which is F all, which is great.
But in a negative way.
Well, that's still an insight. Well, any. Oh yeah.
We'll talk about it later.
Okay, all right. Well, of course, it's about content for the win. So Amanda's amazing. Just want to throw that back in there. I love making her blush. It's great. But of course, I've got a link to the actual Google official blog. What it is about, it's about helpful content, and it's specifically targeting spam and AI-generated content. Now, this is really, really interesting because AI-generated content has had a massive explosion in the last couple of years. There's a lot of people knowing about it. There's Jasper AI and a whole bunch of other options out there. And it's really, really interesting because I have always had the thought that, again, if you're being helpful to the user, maybe having AI-generated stuff isn't getting that uniqueness. We want to see images, we want to see videos, we want to see deep dive content, things that kind of go that extra mile. AI-generated content is great to maybe start with a framework and get some ideas, but if you are predominantly using that, is it really that helpful? Can you honestly look me in the eye and say that it absolutely is? We should see. So this is really what extrapolates. And of course, another thing that it's talking about is that it's further extrapolation on the product reviews update, which was August 2021.
The fourth or fifth one that they've done.
Oh, yeah.
I have another track of them.
Yeah, I'm just trying to even remember back.
I think the most recent one was December.
No,
December.
they had one this month, didn't they? Or they're going to.
There's one this
September.
month, and then
There was one that was earlier this year.
the end of May one.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
one, yeah. And they just keep rolling them out.
Someone just look it up.
Yeah. We might need a helpful timeline, which might be coming later. Oh. But again, I made this because there's not a whole heap that kind of happened in August, so I kind of wanted to go through a little bit further extrapolation. When we talk about quality, now quality is really the interesting word here. If you look into the Google Quality Raters Guidelines, which I go into in the next slide, quality is a really interesting way in the way that Google thinks and talks about quality specifically. When it's talking about helpful content, really, it's talking about the reviews, what are you doing that is a little bit extra? Are you actually having people who know what they're talking about be able to write that content? Are they talking from an expert opinion, or are they talking on an opinion piece? It needs to be really abundantly clear. So again, Google has a really good way of being able to get a sense of who the author is and what their expertise level is, because it's Google's job to figure that stuff out. So if you're ever wondering, look at the author name plus the expert opinion that they're supposed to be writing about. there's tons of content out there about that, then Google has a good idea of who this person is and what their knowledge pertains to. If it's a whole bunch of stuff, Google knows it's probably like a copywriter, a guest writer, someone who's employed to do content at mass. They are great because they might be really great at the way that they write, but are they an expert? Maybe not. So again, keeping that really, really, really clear. Show like qualitative examples of all the metrics, things that are really key information, like about like the size, the shape, the color, the grades, the material, etc., etc., etc. Things that actually really help the user figure out this stuff. Use visuals, like let's say images, like maybe a podcast that is actually going through a really, really great explainer video that's actually showing things. I love camping. You can like very rarely find someone that wants to go on my style of camping. It's not glamping. But what I love about this community is that there are people that will look at like all these different types of tents and different types of sleepwear and things like that, and actually like test them out in the wild and say like, yeah, okay, like I had a really great night's sleep. Like when they say like that this is like a blow mattress that actually like, helps over rough terrain. Well, I slept on rocks last night. It was actually really great. I have that. It's really good. Talk about product evolution. Like, has this product gone through a few iterations? Like, reference that stuff. Like, if there was like a version 1 that was like a beta test product, fine. Leave that content up live. Still interesting for people and for search engines to kind of get the context of how things have evolved. What have been the key issues? How have they been addressed? This stuff is kind of really important. And it's even been marked up and said that that's what they consider to be helpful contextual information for this stuff, quality. Right from a user's perspective, right? But not everybody does it. And again, look me in the eye. Question?
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Sure.
I know we all look about Google's, which is really. I know we all look about Google's, which is really good. There's other search engines like Safari, which is actually taking a big thing with Apple users.
Mm-hmm.
So, do we need to apply the same concept where we are actually, doing with Google? Do we need to apply the same concept with Apple users, which is using Safari?
Yeah, great question. So I kind of like am not 100% sure of that specific use case, but what I know from looking at Bing and from the one. Thank you. Just had a brain fart there for a moment. But from what I know from looking at other search engines, they're following the monolith. They're following what is number one. So like if it applies, and like you can look at Bing. Like Christina Olsen, who's an amazing SEO and a wonderful person. Like she's like got so much content and so much information about how Bing works. A lot of the time, like they find like little things that like Google is doing not so great and improving there, but generally speaking, they're kind of like, well, they're still number one. So maybe users are used to seeing certain types of things from their search engine results page. So maybe we should at least from our experience emulate that and then evolve and improve. So that's kind of like the thinking that I've understood from just, again, talking to Christina and seeing what the difference of search engines are. So for ones that are like maybe in its infancy, again, machine learning, it goes through and it has to do all this work to understand things. But I think if we look at what is like the number one and then work backwards, that might be a good way of at least like addressing all these other things that we want to be able to play in the real estate of different search engines. Does that hopefully answer your question?
Yeah, I have one more question.
Sure.
With the iOS 15 coming up,
Yeah.
and with not able to track a lot of stuff, on Facebook,
Yeah.
How we in the future, how are we going to be able to actually track the conversions, and how are we going to be able to learn from because we're not using cookies anymore. Cookies is if you're not in Apple, you know what it is. Like Apple users, if you're not approved cookies,
Yeah.
you can't track. So what's your recommendation on how we can actually optimize our campaign or any even search engines based on what's happening? It might happen with Google, it might happen with other search engine, I don't know. But what's your suggestion in terms of to be able to keep on the
So you
good
mean
work?
like from like different, like, to track a conversion from
So-
social media all the way through to website to conversion?
Exactly.
Conversion is on the phone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've got an educated guest, but I'm going to bring to the stage Mr. Dan Wild. Everyone just like, Dan Wild is an amazing human and a nerd, but also he is like our in-house tracking expert, and I defer
Just a
to
nerd.
him.
Yeah, so just a massive nerd. So I think there's two things to answer your question, right? First of all, cookies aren't going away. That's the first thing to remember. Oh, are they here forever? Well, until it doesn't make business sense, and then they'll get rid of it. But the reality is at the moment, there's a number of different technologies that are being taken place by all ad service providers, and to a degree, I would imagine some of the movement that we've seen from Google over the last little while has been in preparation for the lack of cookies. I think we all have to understand that privacy, to a certain degree, is not warranted. We all want to, as marketers, know what people are doing, but users, they quite like to know that they're doing their own searching and whatever they need to do. So the reality is that we're trying to find a middle ground between that. I believe that certain new analytics tools are being built with that in mind, but cookies will just be replaced by another method, a more sensitive method that will always exist. Server-side tracking is probably the best way to maintain all of this sort of stuff. It's an absolute pain to do, but it is the single best way to keep that tech rolling for now. And in the future, that'll change. Give it 6 months, 12 months, that answer will change for sure. But that's the short end of it. Just flops. How long we got? No. Look, Google says no, but there'll be Flop 2.0. They'll name it something completely different, and it'll just be Flop. The flopping thing is happening. But yeah, watch the space. It'll happen.
Give it up for Dan Wild. Woo-hoo-hoo! And if you want to find any more from him, he actually did a whole session on Google Tag Manager with us many moons ago. So,
Or just
Are we
ask it.
all irrelevant
Right
now?
here.
oh well,
Just talk to me about it.
there's some good like key concepts in there that I love. So it's great. All right, I might move on to the next one because I want to talk a little bit more about this. Now, anyone who knows me knows I talk about Google EAT a lot, and I talk about the Google Quality Rated Guidelines because it's one of the few things that actually goes into specific detail with specific examples of what they consider to be good or bad. So you can actually pull out different examples. Now, I've been talking to people for many years now saying it's not just about YMYL. There's a whole bunch more in that. There's 177 pages now of the Google Quality Raters Guidelines that has since been updated to include more variation, more detail, more granularity. Now, I feel like with a helpful content update, it really is just mining this a little bit further and defining a little bit more in its algorithms to give more specification. So YMYL, I've said this, so some new faces in the room. Your money, your life. So finance, health, things that impact your pocket, your health, your livelihood, that sort of stuff. Nutrition, thank you. Great, lovely audience. Everything else, shopping, just blog information, all kinds of other stuff. That's all in here as primary examples. This resource has been online available for many years. I think since 2015.
I don't remember when it leaked. I think it was.
Yeah, it was 2013 when it first leaked or something.
Yeah.
2013.
Because originally it was search quality raters for people who actually had the job.
Yeah.
And because I did it for Bing as well back when I was in uni. So
There's another guy who used to do that too.
Hey,
In the room.
20 days. Did you have to install Internet Explorer little plugins and stuff, and then Anyway.
See, I told you, Bing, following Chrome, following Google. Anyway, sorry. Evidence.
Yeah, now I've lost my track of thought.
Sorry.
What was I saying?
But when Google Quality Raters first came out
When it
and
first came
when
out,
it
it's
leaked.
specifically for employees to evaluate search. It's
Yeah.
search. So, and it was a leaked document. And now they just decided to might as well make it public because it's a little bit, it's written a little bit differently because before it was essentially an employee's manual, and now it's actually like it's a public document that can also help us
Yeah.
as an employee's manual.
.pdf.
Yeah, and it does help because essentially you're getting the training material of someone whose job it is to evaluate whether or not a particular search result is relevant for the query. Like being at 2013 when I did it was like a little bit different. We had like a little matrix and like, is the website trustworthy? Is this and that, all that kind of stuff. But it's kind of like the same thing as like if a page has like, if a website has an about us and pictures of staff, it's trustworthy. But if like, you know, Gaston just spun up a website 2 seconds ago and like just did whatever, it's like, do I trust this guy? You know,
No, you shouldn't trust him.
he has the accent, it seduces you, but still, be careful.
Absolutely. So in there's a whole wealth of information. Again, I've linked this in the documents. This will be here if you want to go in and be able to look at it, read it. Please do. Like, put this in here, and I always harp on about this because I really do think that this is a wonderful insight. And for anyone who's really wanted to find out stuff like this, like I've used this to create checklists. I've used this to tell clients. I've used this as prime examples, putting side by side of your content versus what Google actually says is not a right thing to do. And sometimes, in some instances, it's one-to-one. It's like, hey, it says no spammy stuff. Like when you're talking about wanting to promote like this type of like ear medication cream that you think is like revolutionary. That's fine. You can do revolutionary shit. But you also kind of need to do all the work to validate who the F you are. That's really important. And now it's bleeding into like more industries. So again, every month. Hey. Speaking of product reviews, now product reviews kind of like pertains to experts, but now we've got a little bit of something specific for structured data / schema. So here we've got some new stuff, positive notes, negative notes. And again, where's my link? I'll put my link in, sorry. But this is literally from Google's blog as well. But it says like pros and cons, like things to consider. This is really, really helpful for people to be able to like understand a little bit about, oh, this CMS is really, really great for maybe service providers, but it's shocking for people who are in e-commerce. That's really, really helpful. I can just read that, scroll through and do that other stuff. If you're like a great comparison website, like looking at different CMSs to be able to do a migration. Very, very helpful stuff, right? Maybe some non-SEO specific things that you wanted to review. Again, very, very useful. I'm sure there's like a bunch of different things that you guys can think about in your day-to-day where this would be very, very useful, not as a user, but as an SEO. So that's new. Love that.
Before they updated that schema, what Google was doing before was actually using AI to interpret the pros and cons. So it was actually showing up as like a feature on the search result.
I'd see like things bolded out. It's like,
there'll be sometimes it was funny sometimes. It's like they usually look at a table. It's like cons, like published 1964. It's just like it's a bit random, but like they were trying to do it anyway. Now they've actually given away it, must have clearly defined it. And it's already been used, so that's fine.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, every SEO will want to like, highlight only the good things and minimize the bad. Yeah. I think Mascara is a really great example of this because there's so many users specifically out there looking for clumpy in reviews. And Google knows that stuff. It's literally scraping and being like, well, maybe it's not the best thing for someone who specifically maybe like after like they do like refine their search a little bit. Specifically looking for things. So again, very, very helpful. Again, use this, abuse this, do what you like, learn some shit.
Can I be the devil's advocate?
Yeah.
Sure.
Love that stuff. We got a devil's advocate right here.
Is it we could if we keep giving Google data as much process as we are giving it, we are giving Google the opportunity so they can show the information on the search page and users just won't click. We will end up using traffic.
So they're quickly evaluating the product in the search results page as opposed to actually going in and
100%, yeah. And I think it all comes to the website owner and the SEO working there. What's the trade-off there? Because you could be losing if that impacts, I don't know, 10% of your CTR, you're losing 10% of the traffic.
Hmm.
Maybe 10% is a lot, but let's say 1%.
Yeah, but if in the search results they find you to be the best product and choose you anyway, does it matter if you don't get the traffic? You get the conversion.
Could be dependent. If you're an affiliate business, like for example, hotels comparison, when they changed the search for that, we had a client who's number one for like hotels, whatever, in Australia, and they were doing better than the previous year ranking wise, and they were down traffic wise pre-COVID because the search changed. So it could fundamentally, if you're a different type of business as opposed to like an individual SKU level product, it could actually hurt you when people are using. If your job is to evaluate and be the evaluator, and that's your core business, that's actually a threat to your business now.
Yeah, the review size we're gonna get it. Is 100%.
Yeah. So
I'm gonna butt in with maybe a bit of a thing because I think this can keep going. This again. I wouldn't go as far as to like give myself any of that high and mighty grace or anything like that. I mean, again, this is why we say it depends. Everything has like its context of like how things are applied. I mean, I completely hear and understand what you're saying. For a review schema, having like positive and negative reviews and stars, ratings, and all kinds of other stuff, I've had so many, like online e-commerce retailers like, why on earth would I want to put all these shit reviews of these products up there? Again, it's about like what is helpful to the user. If you're being truthful, that's so much better than just trying to hide behind like ambiguity. Because even for better or worse, they know. And statistically, it kind of weeds out, like from what Peter was saying, like, yeah, well, year on year we had better conversions. I remember when we did it with a massive e-commerce retailer when we went through and actually applied more product schema, they had better conversions on their products because consumers just had a way of being able to quickly evaluate and see things, and they just pressed it because maybe it was because of the brand authority, or maybe because like that was just they were lazy and wanted to like, yeah, this seems okay, or this seems like all right, but like I know what to expect from this product because maybe the price is really cheap. And yeah, maybe it might not be great, but it's going to fit me or do the thing or clean the thing for right now. So there's so many different things. All right. Business profile. So this is, I only really have 3 things, and then the 3 things are over, and then we're going to get to Amanda King's amazing presentation.
That's what it's called now,
Google Business Profile. So instead of Google My Business, now Google Business Profiles, where it's a bit weird, a bit sucky, but what can you do? So from the local search forums, like there was people being like, hey, there's like this whole new like UX, like I've never seen this before, of like a scrolling button. Now you can be able to do so much more. If you can see this, there's like edit profile, read reviews, messages, add photo, performance, create ad, edit products, edit services, quote requests, Q&A, add update, ask for reviews. So a lot more in the toolbox for be able to do. Arguably, a lot of these things aren't new, but it's new. That's all I got for August. Sorry, guys. Again, if you want to follow any of this stuff at home, here's a QR link. Go to TLDR Marketing. It basically just grabs all of the top news. You can be able to toggle between like SEO, PPC, social media, anything like that, to be able to customize that to your Gmail or whatever mail you use. Woo! All right, well, that's enough of me. Now I'm going to welcome to the floor the very like amazing, as I keep referring to her, she's gonna, you're gonna love me at the end of this. But look, I actually got to see a little bit more of the rubber meets the road stuff when we were up in Sydney for another conference. She's an incredible SEO. She's got a wonderful wealth of knowledge. And I'm very, very, very excited to welcome her. Amanda King, everyone.
Woohoo! Amanda. Thanks, lovely.
Not some small expectations to live up to there, thanks. So please, if this is shit that you've heard before, just like catcall me and I'll move on. So don't hesitate to ask questions as well. I'm happy to break this up. It's more of a conversation, I would say, at this point than really a presentation. So I will slightly disagree with Nick, but feel free to interrupt maybe just let me finish the slide and then ask questions or tell me I'm wrong, whatever you'd like to do. But yeah, today I wanted to chat a bit about content and some of the wins and observations I've had, particularly over the last couple of years. But as a reminder, Google has been trying to understand content and intent since 2005. It's been a very long and arduous journey to do it, and they're still doing it with the helpful content update, right? How helpful that is, well, we've yet to see. And actually, before I move on, I'm in Sydney. The SEO community in Sydney is not nearly this organized. We don't have these things. So if I could just have a raise of hands, how many folks are like SEO professionals, would you say? Just okay. So let's keep going. How many people have been in SEO for more than 5 years? More than 10? All right, so like legit, if this is all stuff that you'd like, yeah, we know this man, what the fuck, just like move me on. But in all seriousness, I'm happy to delve into whatever this conversation takes us, because I am an open book and happy to chat about whatever. But yes, all the reminders, we had Panda, Penguin, which wasn't actually content, but Panda, Quality Rater Guidelines, Hummingbird, BERT, and Mum as kind of the big movers in the last couple of decades, we'll say. And that's a lot. It's more than 50 major algorithm changes over the span of 15, almost 20 years. So it's not a small job. And there's also, so how many people have ever gone on SEO by the Sea and Bill Slawski's site and just like read for ages and ages and died because there was just so much information? Yeah. This is one of his analyses on natural language processing and understanding the patents. So for context, for those of you who don't know, Bill Slawski, who recently passed, rest in peace. Yes, rest in peace. He would sit down and look at all of the patent applications that Google has made and then translate them into what that meant for the algorithm. And so I don't know who's going to pick that up and do that, because it was some of the most detailed analyses that I'd seen around how Google is actually digesting information and looking at processes. But basically, natural language processing, which is kind of the core of the algorithm now, at least, is about understanding and pulling together all of the bits and pieces that makes a person an expert through various kind of different binary questions. And it's how that gets identified. I will happily say hello to the puppy and presenting it. And it's building its own Wikipedia, essentially. Has anyone really ever gone into kind of entity and co-occurrence knowledge graphs and then disambiguity and ontology and all of that? Has anyone kind of, who sat down and looked at that? I don't count you anymore because you're just like, yes, I've done everything.
There's like what's that? I can't remember off the top of my head, but you can put in content and then it's like the natural.
Yeah, so there's the natural language API that Google has. Yeah,
it's good.
It is. There are some other tools that will use it to some extent, like ClearScope does, I think, as does SERP SEO and some others.
We use those knowledge graph tools to try to figure out how to get the knowledge panel?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, look, honestly, sometimes it's as simple as looking at the search result, seeing what the questions are, and then answering the questions, and also getting Wikipedia. Yeah. But one of the things with natural language processing that I found particularly interesting, and that Bill did actually write quite a bit about because there was a lot in it, is understanding disambiguity. So understanding when someone says horse, they don't necessarily mean the animal. It depends on the context of all of the rest of their searches. They could be a gymnast. They could be they're a carpenter. Like, there are a bunch of different contexts that change what a search means. And that's also a large part of understanding the topical relationships and what all of these kind of algorithmic elements are about. And Google doesn't always get it right. This is personally a bugbear of mine because SEO and strategy is not the same as tactics, right? And SEO is not a compilation of tactics. That's not what it is. So I've actually written an article/rant about it. So shameless plug, if you ever feel like getting into the weeds with how I look at strategy and what that is, feel free to check out this article. But that is the thing to remember with Google, right? It's only as good as the information we give it. So if you see a competitor doing something for a particular search result or a particular query or a particular intent, just because they're ranking number one doesn't mean you have to exactly copy that content. If it isn't actually answering the question of the query, if it's just the best result there is of shit, it's still shit. So it's all about all of these things when it comes to kind of understanding disambiguation and entities. It's about the relatedness and the interconnectedness and whether you search for things kind of at the same time or what that all looks like. It's never, or very rarely now, are your searches in isolation. There's always context to it, and that's how Google is building all of these entities and their own Wikipedia in the back end and understanding what it means for someone to be an expert in the field. So it's already known correlations, it's already known related topics, all the disambiguations, all of that. Yes?
Just a very quick question.
Yeah.
I know like search engines mean like not on Google but different things.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, for example, when you are looking for content,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I'm doing content research.
Yeah.
Because I do sometimes send EDMs, which is electronic.
Yep.
When I'm looking for content that people really like, and I know that people use different, they use their phone, they use different devices.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say they're using iPhone and everything. So when I do content research, let's say we normally use Google.
Mm-hmm.
But do you recommend me to actually use my phone, which is an iPhone, to actually search what user is actually looking for before actually, putting some content together for sending something in an EDM, for example?
Yeah. So let me talk. I think I'll answer that as we kind of go through. But generally, you want to answer your customers' questions, right? And you can go to search to understand the context of how Google and other search engines are kind of understanding that intent, right? So maybe for all of the, for the new iPhone that's coming out, right? Maybe all of the searches for iPhone reviews are video results. You wouldn't want to necessarily write a long think piece because that's not what people are consuming. So I would use search results more as kind of context for what kind of media to put your information into. But, yes, but also the base of it is always to answer your customers' questions and make sure. So you don't really need search engines for any of that. You just need to be able to talk to your customers. So with all of that and with what we just discussed, why the fuck are we still writing blog articles? Seriously. And why are people still saying this shit? And keyword density. Like, why? Why?
Is word count a ranking factor?
And make a list of topics, make a list of long tail keywords, build pages for each topic, set up a blog, create a consistent schedule, compress media files. So some of this is still good advice, right? It's still like, you don't want 11 meg image files on your website. That doesn't make any sense. But this is not modern content. This is not what modern content should be, right? Creating an article for each keyword doesn't make any sense, particularly now when Google understands that someone who is an expert will be talking about all of those things in the same article because they're an expert. Like, it doesn't, and blog articles, how many people have a blog article on one website or another they're actively working on that is linked in the footer and nowhere else? Anyone? Have we moved past that?
Oh, definitely isn't that yeah.
Blog articles are siloed, they're time-bound, and we're ashamed of them as a business. We don't highlight them and we don't highlight that content. So burn it all down.
Is that you and you?
Yes. No. It's the meme.
It's been this deck in the making.
But just as a reminder, other than don't be evil, Google's mission is to organize the world's information, make it universally accessible and useful. Having that content in a blog article, buried in the footer, hidden from all your customers, that makes us all look bad as modern SEOs, because our job is to accelerate and make that process easier for Google. Whether or not we like Google as an entity is another question, but we have to work with them to some extent or another. And a blog doesn't do that, right? And to kind of give some examples, this is a client that I'm currently working with. Actually, very timely before the helpful content update, I went through and pruned all of their content on their blog. They had the same article probably written 8 different times because there had been 5 different writers. None of them actually went back and looked at the historical content. So someone would write something and it was about, they would write about, say, fancy thing A, right? And then 18 months later, a new writer would come on board and write about fancy thing A. But because they had different URLs, no one caught on to the fact that it was the same topic, right? And want to be very clear, sorry, it's not that it's not about link juice, it's not about link sculpting. Link sculpting, fuck that shit. That is old, that is useless. I'll take that stand. But actually find all of your duplicates, all of your near duplicates, consolidate them, prune it, make sure that the content that you have is relevant, up to date, and actually do the annoying, obnoxious 301 redirects. Get it done. Just do it.
In a scenario like that, you have like 6 articles that are very similar from the topic standpoint. You create a super article and like pick one of your like, the best performing one and just like the best version of your like your Estee Lauder sunscreen.
Yeah.
Or like how would you go about it? Or would you just get rid of the ones that are outdated or like what's the process?
So it depends. Typical SEO answer. It depends. It depends. But no, generally the way that I would approach it is any kind of unique elements in any of the duplicate or near duplicate articles, I would consolidate into, usually what I would do is I would take the content that has had the most impact and have that be the one that's kept. So whether that's traffic, conversions, visibility, or a combination of all three, I'd usually keep the highest performing one and then roll everything up into that one, including sending all of the 301 redirects there as well. But there are also some instances where you do just need to kind of burn the topic to the ground and start from scratch. If, for example, you've had an annual roundup of the best of your industry for the last decade, right? But you only feel like you need to keep actually live, say, the last 3 years, but you want to keep the content of the 7 years before that. You can create a new article that's an archive, that's like a summary or a big in-depth article of all of the rest and roll those up. That's generally kind of how I tackle the timely ones, where it's you are creating a new URL, but all of the content is getting rolled up into it from the historical archives.
If you're saying that this content,
Might as well leave one.
If you're saying that there is content that's not useful, that you want to kill it, why redirect and not 404?
Because I am.
Here they're telling why not index
Or
or
better unavailable after. Or,
Yeah. So no index doesn't mean it's not crawled.
Yeah.
And
but not index would mean that it's not counted against.
no, but it's still being crawled. It's still taking time. I mean,
does it,
mind you, I recognize that most websites don't have to worry about crawlability. I am
every website?
not crawlability, but
Indexability?
no.
Crawl budget.
Crawl budget. That word. Thank you. Crawl budget. But no, I am probably the furthest from high risk that you can be in SEO. And with 301s, at least, you are at least acknowledging to Google, hey, we know we had really similar content to this for a really long time and it's over here. And we're actually saying, oh, hey, go over here instead. Whereas with a 404, you're not necessarily proving that relationship. But honestly, I do 301s out of a kind of obnoxious amount of conservativeness. I have no real objections to doing them as 404s if it's easier.
Yeah, because I was going to say if the page is no longer available, that's what a 404 means. If John Mueller was here, he'll be saying, well, if the page is no longer available, it should be a 404. So that's the intent if a page no longer exists, or if it's gone, even a 410.
But the other side of it is you're also to a certain extent. Yeah, I get you.
We can't be discussing this for hours.
I do 301s because I'm relatively conservative and it makes more sense in my brain when I look at it from a topical perspective. When I'm like, okay, there was all of this old content that was related to this topic that is no longer needed So I'm going to point it over here to the authority that I have on my website of that topic.
So are you talking specifically articles? Like you're not like say if I work in a gambling industry every single day. And every single day, week, there's a sporting event, right?
Yeah.
There's a live event. But those live events, they have a very specific one-day shelf life from an SEO standpoint.
Yeah.
But I would never redirect them because that's actually the wrong way to approach it.
Exactly.
So the best way to do it would be unavailable after,
Yes.
or a no index, and it's still crawlable. Like we have 80 billion bets that still technically, if you want to look at it, but we use robots for that.
Yeah.
Like there's different mechanisms for that, so that's why like we don't want to salvage link juice for like something like
No,
that.
I'm more specifically talking about content in this instance.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So one question. How do you
Sorry, just for the
Yeah.
YouTube audience.
Just very quickly. So how do you build the best content and how do you create topical authority?
Next, later. Let me keep talking.
Sorry, Amanda.
Don't apologize. I opened the floodgates. It's okay.
Yeah, no, it's great. I love it.
Have you had experience with crawl budget? And when you're building new content, you mentioned you're building a lot of content, you don't tend to redirect through using 301 redirects. How do you manage the crawl budget then? And so you publish your new content. How do you ensure that Google actually crawls that one and has enough crawl budget to pick up on that content and crawl and index it effectively?
I feel like this is probably after drinks. When you've had a few, you just have a banter. But
because there's so many different things that I can kind of extrapolate. But it's a really, really great question. There's so much that you kind of need to factor in, so many different signals that you need to look at.
I mean, I can tell you when I was at Optus, I was never really successful at managing call budget because our IT infrastructure was so difficult to manage kind of redirects and indexability generally. So I don't have that feedback at an enterprise level where it's really the only time that you would be hitting crawl budgets.
There's only small things you can be able to get through and you're like, oh, yay, win. And then like look at the sea of things that Google's crawl but not index. Like, oh, what about all this? It's like, we'll try.
We will do what we can.
Yeah, put it in the priority list.
Yeah. But just as this is the client that I was talking about that I was working with, and completely entirely acknowledging that these are updates to the keyword database from Ahrefs. So this here is definitely from the keywords, but the rest is me. But it is
again why I said she's amazing. Sorry, I'm just putting it in there again.
But just in terms of actually seeing the impact in the traffic as well, it is coming through. And this was after the redirects have been implemented as well. Google likes seeing things in a related way where it's easy, rather than having to, the way that I described it to this client, because they had a bunch of information really kind of unlinked and not in any consistent way on their blog. I said it would be like if you went to the shops looking for a blue shirt and someone was like, yeah, we've got half a blue shirt here, but the other half is somewhere outside this building, down the street, around a corner, and I couldn't tell you exactly where it was, which is not a fun experience for anyone. So consolidation. If it's not something you've done or considered doing yet, and you have a blog or you have a resource center, try it.
With that graph, like how many blog pieces was that?
In terms of consolidating?
Yeah.
So they had about, I want to say they had about 600 blog articles when I did the first crawl, and then by the time that I had redirected everything, it had gone down to I want to say like 280. So not unsubstantial in terms of a relative measure, yeah. But to answer your question in terms of, where did she go? In terms of creating content and finding topics, how many folks in here, how many of you say you would start with the keyword? How many would start with business? Yeah, I always say start with business. You want to see that that you're answering your customers' needs and that things line up. I know I'm super like low risk, super conservative, super like do what's best for the business. You have a question.
I have a question. I want to agree with you.
Yeah, you're on what, 3,000? I just want to agree with you very quickly. I moved from agency to in-house recently.
Yeah.
And big, massive difference. Like when you're integrated within the business and you get to ask those questions from the sales team, from the merch team, from the content team, everyone. It's the kind of integration. It's the kind of integration that agencies do need, like within the business, absolutely. And I feel like that's something that, you know, from moving from agency to business side, that's one thing that I want to promote a lot of is it's a business first approach. No matter what content you put out, they will knock you back.
Yeah.
So it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
But it's really, I agree with you.
Yay.
There's some kindred spirits here. I'm gonna like link you two up.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
I'm being a pain in the ass.
No, you're not being a pain in the ass. Like I said, I opened the floodgates. It's all good.
He's stuck in.
Don't break yourself, Nick.
Have you found yourself having too much pushback from other stakeholders? Because I'm also in an in-house team, and pushback is just so annoying, and it's hard to build trust with them.
What are they pushing back on? Why are they pushing back?
Because they have other priorities, and when you say, "Hey, we're gonna produce this piece of content, and we believe that in the next 3 to 6 months it's gonna bring traffic," they will say, "Well, but we have this other piece of work that we have to do that we believe is gonna bring more money to the business."
Yeah.
in 2
So
weeks."
your business case, did it have revenue in it? Did it have the number that your stakeholder cares about?
Of course.
Okay, you mentioned traffic, that you said you brought it. Oh, we'll do this and it'll generate traffic for you. And then they said, oh, but we have other things that'll generate more money. Did you tell them this will bring this much money?
Yes.
And they still said no?
Yes. This is not something that happened in my current company. So the thing is, when you're publishing content, you have to. It's hard to build a relationship with other teams sometimes in the business because they are opinionated, as we all are.
Yeah.
And they have their own opinion, saying, "Hey, well, my project is more important than yours, and we believe that it's gonna, even if it brings the same amount of money."
So managing stakeholders is one of the hardest things in any kind of SEO's job, right?
Preaching to the choir, right?
Yeah, I wanted to know your opinion on that.
Yeah. So how I do it, basically, and I mentioned this a bit later, but how I do it is a bit of social engineering, but also just generally, I stalk them a bit. I talk to their team. I talk to their PA if they have one. Like, what does this person fucking care about? What keeps them up at night? How can I leverage what matters to them and the things that they talk about and that they care about in this conversation? And it's a very, I go with a relatively humble approach when I talk to stakeholders, because the way that I present everything is, even though I am the one bringing this to you, and this is like my project, it's all about you. It's the benefit this will bring you. It's the benefit this will bring your team. It's the benefit this will bring your internal visibility. It is not me at all. So I pretty much take my influence and my opinion out of that conversation. Everyone has their different approach. That's how I do it. And I'm just generally also like, a very bantery kind of person as well. If you can't tell. So I also never really, people are people, right? I get to know them as people, and I understand that, you know, everyone puts their pants on one leg at a time, right? But that's how I approach it generally.
There's an amazing presentation that she goes through that I got to see. Sorry, that I got to see up at Search Marketing Summit in Sydney earlier this year, and it is phenomenal. And it goes through in much more detail, but it is a wonderful summary. But if you search specifically Amanda King and about that stuff, you're going to find so much more great information about that. So I just want to again give you the bit of a plug there as well.
And for me with content as well, I always remind myself that regardless of whether or not someone puts a question mark at the end of their search, every search is a question. That everyone is trying to solve a problem with that search. Smarty pants over there, shush. So for example, like I'm ex-Optus. I was there for 3 years. I went through well too many iPhone launches. I'm very happy not to be thinking about that this week. But just as a bit of an example, so when I'm looking for a new phone, I want the least expensive one because mine is broken and I need a new one fast. So you get searches like cheap phones, same day delivery, or best phones under $300 at Officeworks. Whereas someone with a different job to be done would have an entirely different search behavior. So I tend to go through this exercise as well after I speak to my customer service team or my sales reps and actually ask the questions that people are asking. At what point did everyone find the magic that is the customer service team? I hope everyone has found the magic of the customer service team. But I found it because at the fintech that I worked at 5 years ago now, small office, the marketing team was actually sitting directly behind our customer service team. So every day I would hear like the same 6 questions being answered. I'm like, well, why don't we just answer that on the website? So they don't have to call. And content audits. This actually isn't a content audit. This is a content inventory. Wow. If you haven't actually sat down and read anything by Ian Laurie, he's the ex-director of Portent in Seattle. Dungeons and Dragons nerd, also grew up in New Jersey like me. He does this massive dump of how he approaches content inventory. And it is everything that is kind of good and amazing about content. It's linked in the
It's so awesome.
Yeah,
I see like Trust Flow from Majestic, Facebook shares, likes, comments. Yeah, wow, that's so.
This is not about traffic, right? This is about understanding the topics and understanding what it is that you have and what's working. And part of the analysis is using something like page value or another representative value to get a sense of what your amplifiers are, so that way you can say, okay, you know, people who read this article about safety are 2.5 more times likely to convert than those who didn't. And so it's a really, like, it's a pain in the ass to do because it's lines and lines and lines and lines and lines and multiple data sources. But it's an exercise worth trying.
Is your tools for Excel?
Yes. Every one of those metrics in one little Excel.
I have a question. I mean, I'm very impressed by that. It's very impressive. But how do you do it?
SEO tools for Excel.
Which one? Can you do it on?
It is called SEO tools for Excel.
So it's like Excel. I'm sorry if you've got a Mac. This is why I struggle with a PC now. But like, I bought a PC like specifically so I could do this because it's not available online. But it's great. You can have Majestic, you can have Ahrefs, you can have SEMrush. I literally recently actually got
You got SEMrush?
Yeah, I got the the keyword intent added through their API. I love that stuff.
But if you don't have that,
It's called
SEO tools for Excel.
for Excel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a plugin for Excel.
But if
And
you
can
don't,
make it anything.
Yeah.
Is it like you have to pay for it?
Yeah,
It's
but there's a
99 bucks
14-day
per
trial.
year. It's cheap as.
There's a
I
14-day
need to
trial
convince my
and
company to actually do that.
And
But
that's
can
another
can you
thing.
can you do something like that on AXS?
yes.
Yeah, you can use Ahrefs.
Ahrefs,
Yeah.
you can do queries,
How?
there are a lot of
Come find me on
tutorials and things. Find us after.
Yeah.
Find us
I've literally
after.
got it on that computer. I can show you.
But between that and natural language processing and the quality rater guidelines, which Nick mentioned, but one thing that is specifically said is content that is fit for purpose, right?
Yeah.
We've done the analyses as SEO professionals afterwards where it's like, oh, longer articles perform better, 2,000 words, or you're fucked. That if it's not fit for purpose, don't write a 2,000 word article on something that takes 50 words to explain.
It's like you've got the intent. Yeah, this is super key. I love this. Everything you're presenting, I'm absolutely loving, by the way.
Hopefully some of it you haven't heard before.
Yeah, it's really good. Search intent and how content works in search is key to SEO. But with this in particular, it's formatting of the page to cater to what the user wants to see is so key.
Yeah.
It's not about word count. And a long-term client of mine, we only so I've been working with them for 2.5 years, but we've only created in a blog sort of format, you could say we've only created around 7 pieces in 2.5 years. But each piece is insanely high quality and it's catered to the exact context that the user wants to see.
Awesome.
So one of the pieces we have is based on dimensions and sizes of a certain product range. And the
If you say mattress, then
it's a shipping container. And it's insanely long. There's 60 tables going through all the different products.
Yeah.
But the word count is really low.
Yeah.
But because it's formatted in tables, it performs insanely well. And that's the context of what the user wants to see.
Absolutely.
So it's you've kind of got the double-edged sword. You got, well, not double-edged sword, but the two parts.
The proof is in the pudding.
And then you've got the actual context of or formatting of the page.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that's really awesome to hear. It's always good to see the ideal scenario come to life in reality because sometimes the shitty things still win. Yeah.
Oh shit.
Nick, do your job.
Sorry for stopping you.
No,
but,
it's fine.
Over time, when you're saying that word count doesn't matter, which I 100% agree, and cater to your customer, but how would you see within industries like finance, it will need a bit more knowledge and more information, but where should we stop? With why and why, where should we stop? 1,000 is something
When it answers the question. When it answers the question.
Yeah.
If it ends up being a 3,000 word white paper, fine, great, awesome. If it ends up being a 20,000 word ebook, great, awesome. Whenever there is enough information for the customer to make an informed decision.
And do you ever think about keyword density and
No.
depend on that and be
No. Never.
It's good to have a summary to answers the key questions, things like that up in the as well.
It's basically based on user intent. So it doesn't matter how many words it is. It's just if the article answers the question of the user, that's what you want to aim at.
Yep, and sometimes it's not always an article either, right? If the answer to a question is 50 words and it's direct, it shouldn't be an article, right? It should be an FAQ on a page.
Can it be an infographic?
Well,
That's a different type of strategy.
yeah, that's a different type of strategy, right? Yes.
Or like, that's a great linkable asset to
Yeah.
maybe like contextualize. And again, what you were saying with like amplification. You know, like what are you using as like an anchor thing to be able to do this? Like, oh, sourced by Optus
Yeah.
Australia. Like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Infographics are great.
So it's a bit of, infographics are a bit of a different strategy, right? Because they're not intrinsically legible to search engines. So if you have a video, for example, you always want to have a transcript, right? Because it's accessible and it's also more legible to search engines. With an infographic, generally you'd want to have some sort of summary attached to it if you're trying to use it for visibility to answer a specific question.
How about if you use like schema code? Would that be able to actually communicate?
I don't think there's schema for infographics.
There's schema for images.
There's schema for like data that's a table form, so you can
Yeah.
do that.
But it's not necessarily in a table
It
form.
would be that, like it would be very difficult for you to communicate that this
Yeah.
image contains the data.
Yeah, I think it's just like image schema, and you can add like
Yeah,
extra
well-
information about what is in that image.
Yeah, but it'll be still
Yeah.
like I would think.
I might cap it here because I really want to see what's next.
Wanna see the rest of it?
Yeah, sorry.
You got
No, pick my brain
Sorry,
after. I'll
but
be
keep,
around.
Keep questions like if you got some more like
maybe
we'll
at
take
the
them
end.
out. Yeah.
We'll suss it out. All
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I'm not. It's not like I'm you know vanishing into thin air after this. I'll just be in Sydney. No, absolutely. No, but site structure.
Yeah.
How many people actually have their resources structured under the product that they're related to? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. This is definitely. Thank you.
Just
This is. I can't do this.
oh sorry. There we go. Do you have any water today?
Well, I'm behind my water cage. No, this is actually one thing that we had real success with at Optus. I'll go down here first and then go back. But we actually went in and I made the point to structure our content about our phones. I haven't been keeping track of time. Tell me when I need to.
Oh, you're
Okay.
No stress.
Whatchamacallit? Sorry. But we actually deliberately structured phone review content underneath the phone product category and found that it incrementally positively impacted conversion rate because a rising tide lifts all boats. And when pages underneath that product category and that URL structure were getting visible for long tail keywords, it pushed up everything above it as well, and created a much stronger hierarchical relationship. And that's what this article or this quote was from John Mueller, was that basically Google doesn't really like flat websites. And so if you have your blogs or your resources in a different section of your website to the product or the thing that they're talking about, challenge you to do a proof of concept and bring across some of that content underneath your actual product category or what it's related to and see what happens.
By Joe, she's right. So I'm just looking at your URL structure. This is fucking awesome. Sorry.
Yeah.
So would that mean having
So would that mean having your content on the collections page? So for example, collection/iPhone, would it be collection/iPhone/ how to pick the best iPhone?
So the way that we did it, so at Optus, we had the structure was mobile slash mobile slash phones. And then you got into slash Google slash Apple slash whatever, or you got into our phone plans. So what I did was actually, I had to create another folder because my DevOps team yelled at me that it wasn't clear that this content was content. So I created another folder that was basically our content folder, and put everything underneath that. So it was mobile phones, content folder, article name is how we did it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. And we saw that 21% incremental uplift in purchase rate. So if it's not something you've tried yet, I suggest giving it a go on something that your boss won't care if you lose a bit of visibility on for a little bit.
What a hack. What a tip.
Who knows about all of the SEO A/B tests that Search Pilot is doing? Yeah? Okay. Potentially your new BFF when you're building business cases. So Search Pilot, formerly Distilled, they, for the last, I want to say maybe 3 or 4 years, maybe a bit longer, have been focusing on running SEO A/B tests because they had a SEO A/B test platform that they wanted to sell. So they worked in public and actually published a bunch of results on various different things, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of case studies, some small, some large. But I would definitely recommend checking it out because if you don't have your own proof of concept or your own kind of case study from work you've done yourself previously or work you've done at the company that you're in, you want to go to industry case studies. And this is they're A/B tests. You can't argue with data, or at least not easily. So I would definitely
All the
suggest.
in-houses are like madly on their phones right now, like, oh yeah.
So for example, this one was they ran a test on including just review schema. And they saw a 20% uplift, whereas when they had both product and review schema, it was inconclusive. So it's a good kind of bouncing off point to make arguments and case studies internally. We chatted about this a little bit already, but customer surveys, verbatims, your customer service team, your help and your knowledge documentation, your subdomain, your Zendesk, whatever it is, the knowledge graph itself. It took me a long time to remember to go back into search results and actually see what was there. It's fine. The water prison is fine. It's all good. There's also the case studies, competitive comparisons, all of these things that we all know and love. Anyone have any other sources of content that they use that they feel like is something that maybe some people miss? Yeah?
I listen to sales calls.
Yeah. Absolutely. Sales call recordings. Yep. Yeah. Sales call recordings.
I use Ahrefs.
Ahrefs. Yep.
Books.
Books. How so?
I don't want to say it on a recorded thing, but let's just say you have a large inventory of searchable books, and
Yeah.
you can actually be able to break stuff down by topic basis, and find stuff that what experts talk about, and it kind of marry with whatever other first-party information you have and how it relates to what expertise.
Yeah, that is actually true. Google does have a massive database of various different things, as well as other competitors and other things as well, but scholarly databases generally. Anything else that anyone feels like is a kernel of their secret sauce when it comes to content?
No, it's just
Surveys?
so many sources. Like, it's not only one. It's like
I like to do surveys.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm looking like for region-specific things, like things a little bit more in the data, like things that like weren't even being able to pull out of keyword research, like things like like in this like region or in this country, people colloquially talk about this. So we've run a test with like 1,000, like maybe 5,000 different like on the ground people that we can verify from that specific town or in that specific state, territory, country. So we can be like, like these are the things that it's saying. I can find this in the keyword research, but we never would have found that if we didn't kind of like cross-reference this with a survey. Random
And
ass.
something very interesting is actually, yes, the search is really awesome, but I actually go and talk to the sales team.
Yeah.
Because they know about the customer, they know what they want, they know what they ask, and the questions are actually real, what they ask.
Yeah.
And sometimes I just go and ask them sales team and just ask them, what did the customer ask you?
Absolutely.
And it does help.
You need the microphone. What's up?
It's for the YouTube, please like and subscribe. I was just saying, I work in house, so I talk to the buying team as well because there's content that I don't even know or consumers don't even know they're going to be searching for.
Yeah.
But they're always on the pulse in terms of what's coming up next.
Well, look at that. What we're talking about with zero search.
What a nice segue.
Heavy. So, like, for example, if someone wanted like earrings, what's something that surprised you that they wanted to search for? Like, about earrings or jewelry, that kind of
There's nothing surprising yet.
It's all the same stuff.
It's all the same stuff, but we're talking about materials. So these days, like eco-friendly materials and the type, like
So like vegan silk.
things like I kind of
Or like, for example,
vegan or something.
I talk to my clients as well about like, so one of my clients is a jeweler and I'm like, okay, what trends are you seeing in what stones people are looking for, what designs, because that's not always necessarily reflected in search, right? So that's part of the zero search as well. Just because something doesn't have search volume, it may be too early. Maybe too early for it to, you may be ahead of the curve. So don't
client that was like that in the lash game, like the eyelash extensions game.
Yeah.
And she was telling me pro-made fans. That's the next thing. I'm like, there's no search volume for pro-made fans. But I was like, let's go with it. So because everything was pre-made fans. And I'm like, all right, let's go with it. We created like content, we changed, we made a collection page for it. We made products specifically just for pro-made fans, and then we started out on top.
We did, we're from the same old agency. One of the clients I worked on was beauty products and creams and all that. So we told them, tell us everything you know from a molecular point of view, the scientific point of view, because hydrolonic, whatever that name, that thing. Not a big word. Of course you know that. Is that why your skin is glowing? But yeah, a couple of years ago, that wasn't a big thing, or like 4 years ago, that wasn't a big thing. So we told them, think of that as an example and tell us everything you know.
Yeah.
They gave us a massive list and we're like, let's do it. Let's just go after absolutely everything, because all of these are gonna,
they're gonna be
gather a lot of volume over time. That was a really good one.
Absolutely. Oh no! What? All the rest.
Just want to add on that. One of my clients was a jeweler as well, and it was like a few months ago. The trend was to launch these pearl jewelries, like necklaces, and like our team had this idea to write content about the pearl necklaces and bracelets. And we did a research by reading these fashion articles, because I think it even though the search volume is not that high, but it was growing.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's also a good source to see.
Absolutely. No, all really good. And then I think kind of my final reminder here and my final like burn down the house moment is actually link to the content. Actually like include it in your product pages, include it in your FAQs, where it actually makes sense, somewhere that isn't time bound and isn't
tracking URLs, none of that.
yeah. So that is the end, and I have a little shout to a further explanation of how I get buy-in if you're curious. But it's never about you. It's all about them. It's all about them. Yeah. But this is me. Throw me your questions or stand me a
Can we
beer.
just give it up for a minute?
And here am I.
Like I said, sorry, Mike, you're amazing. And I love the presentation. I think that we had some great questions. So we already got one. So
I have one question for not only you, but anyone in the room anyway.
Yeah, we've got some great
So,
talent out here.
I'm just thinking, is link building still something that you
Yes.
think it's
Yes.
important?
Yes.
Yes.
Link building is still important.
We don't call it link building. It's link earning.
No, link building is still important, but there is always the possibility now of being able to build visibility without as many links as your competitors in that space if it's good enough, if it fits the query enough.
I might just do a little shout out because we had Trustflow in there before, but to Majestic, they have recently launched Link Graph, and it is amazing. Where are you, Peter Mead? Where are you? Right there.
Hiding over here in the corner.
Yeah. We've been having some fun just going through and finding PBNs and things like that, but it's a really, really great way. It basically pulls in like the top 50s, am I right? The Link Graph by Majestic.
What should I say? Yes, well, Majestic's been around a long time. The link graph is awesome, and if you start pulling at threads, yes, you will find link networks galore. And when you look at often, the pattern I found was that most of the PBNs, when you go and have a look and see how many rankings and how much traffic they're getting, it's 0. So I'll just leave it there.
And if anyone has been frantically taking photos, I will be publishing this to SlideShare later.
Heck
sometime
yeah.
this week.
Woohoo!
And you can always find me on LinkedIn, stalk me,
Yeah.
whatever.
Do you have a Twitter?
I pretend I have a Twitter. I went back on it about 4 weeks ago, and the last time I tweeted was about 4 weeks ago. So yes, but no.
Yes, but no. Okay.
Yes, but
so
no.
LinkedIn is the best way to be able to reach out to Amanda King if you've got any more questions, which we do. Alex Duncan in the back row.
G'day. So just coming back to the point about, siloing like information hubs underneath like a collection and like specifically like the product, with the recent like integration of indented, search queries, would that possibly actually improve the like ability to actually increase your indented searches?
Yeah, site packs though tend to come in. It's usually 4, 3, or 6. Usually they come in, or 8 if it's a branded search. So if and you wouldn't get more than those kind of prescribed numbers of packs, but entirely possible for the articles that are in that silo to rank as like site kind of subgroups in there.
So it's almost like looking at it from the perspective of you've got the iPhone 12 and then the indented
14.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be in all likelihood, yeah.
Might have to try it.
Go for it. Let me know how you go. Yes.
You were talking before about
pruning content.
Yeah.
And you had that client, you had the example of, and you went from 600 pieces to 280 or something like that. How did you consolidate them? Like, what was the process of actually finding, okay, let's say you've got three articles about widget A. Like, how did you actually identify that they're on the same topic, like in the spreadsheet? Or,
URLs.
Like, is it super manual or?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I can't really.
Super manual. I mean, I did a rough cut based on kind of URLs and what the titles were.
Title and sort maybe like low traffic ones as well. That's how I would do it. Like,
so it was a combination of low traffic and low visibility.
Yeah. Okay. I was hoping you'd have something where you press a button and it just
No,
says these 8.
No, unfortunately, I did not have an SEO tools for Excel.
Okay.
But again, it's so awesome because you can literally just pull it in from Search Console, have a look at the queries, have a look at like the URL structures, and it's a really, really great way to be able to find patterns specifically if you're looking specifically at cannibalization.
Why aren't you using the microphone now?
Sorry?
Why aren't you using the microphone?
Why aren't you using the microphone?
Do as I say, not do as I do.
Just a quick question.
When you consolidated all those 600 into 300 something, did you make all the redirections just on one day at the same time? What was the strategy there? If there was
they were an e-commerce website, right? So their overall number of product pages I had was in the thousands. So doing a couple hundred redirects in a day wouldn't have raised eyebrows, but I had a relatively old school conservative point of contact. So I was like, we'll portion it out and like do it once a week. We'll do 50 redirects. But it wouldn't have bothered me, honestly, if I had done it all in a day, because from the relative scope of things, it wasn't that many pages that were actually affected, right? Because their e-commerce site was in the thousands and this was a couple of hundred pages. Shall we have drinks now?
Yep.
Is this the end? Nick, is this the end? Do you have any final words?
All right, I'm going to close up. Thank you so much for your time. That was amazing.
Absolutely.
Thank you. You're not relegated to like the water prison, but thank you so much. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. That was SEO Meetup for September. Please stay tuned. Next month, we'll be having some things happen with some really, really great keynotes. Keep on in touch with the SEO Eventbrite and, of course, with LinkedIn. I'd love to see us. All right, let's the music play. Woo-hoo!
How are you going? Good, yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to end the broadcast. Yeah.